Hello and welcome to the Leading Communities podcast, brought to you by Aspire for You CIC and produced by That's All Media CIC. I'm Kit Chawande and I'll be your host.
Hello and welcome to the next episode of Leading Communities. Leading Communities is a podcast series all about getting people to start caring, keep caring or care more. So we interview different types of people that maybe have access to policy, access to a particular skill or a specialism, which is going to help us as community leaders to be able to move forward a little. So today I am pleased to welcome Mike Lewis, who is Senior Policy Officer for West Midlands Combined Authority. Hi, Mike. Nice to have you. How are things going for you?
Yeah, pretty good at the minute. Busy, but good.
Okay. And so, I mean, first of all, let's maybe start with the basics. Like, what do you do and why should it matter to communities?
So what I do is as the title says, I work as a policy officer at the West Midlands Combined Authority, and I work within the strategy directorate at the authority. And what that means is what I try and do is my directorate, tries to kind of bring policy together across the combined authority. So we've got different portfolio holders, different areas of work. So we just try and knit everything together and make sure it kind of joins together to kind of achieve our aims. The reason why communities should care is, I suppose, the combined authority, everything we do is driven towards making the lives of people in the West Midlands more prosperous and to deliver inclusive growth. So literally everything we do is for communities and communities within the West Midlands region. Sometimes people might feel like they're a bit far away from what we do, but actually everything we do is kind of driven by our communities. So that's why I think communities should care about what we do.
So excellent. So you said about inclusive growth. That's a phrase I've heard a lot more in 2020. So obviously we're in December. We're potentially looking after the tail end of Corona.
Yeah.
We're potentially starting to look and think about what recovery looks like. So what is inclusive growth all about?
Well, to me, inclusive growth is all about just making sure every policy intervention that we deliver basically benefits communities in the West Midlands region. So whether we're developing brownfield land to deliver housing, making sure that it kind of delivers for people, especially marginalised and vulnerable people in the region. When we're kind of developing our transport interventions, making sure people can access opportunities across the region, especially people from kind of deprived communities. So literally, to me, it's about making sure that everything we do is beneficial to people of this community, of this region, but especially people that are marginalised and live in kind of deprived communities. It's about kind of addressing issues related to equity, inequality, and making people more prosperous is kind of my interpretation of it.
Okay. And then you said brownfield. So very quickly, how would you explain brownfield sites and marginalisation? Words like that, like what do they mean in a 2020 context?
So brownfield land is kind of you could it's literally what it is. It's kind of land that has kind of been repurposed for different purposes, you could say. So for instance, if a business was on a piece of land, a plot of land, that business is no longer there, we might have knocked it down because it's just not there anymore. We'll kind of use that land, redevelop it for housing in our perspective. So it's just repurposed land, you could say.
Yeah. So greenfield tends to be ones that you can't touch. You need to preserve them for nature. Yep. Brownfield can be very often out of a town centre or out of a city, but it's got a little bit of potential for being used for commercial purposes or for housing. Like no one's laid a stake to say hands off that land.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And then for marginalised society, like what from your perspectives, what do marginalised societies sound like, look like, feel like?
Marginalised society to me are people that can't, for reasons of inequality and equity, that can't access the things that they have the rights to do. So whether it's because of social reasons, because they haven't got the social networks or social capital, whether it's like monetary reasons that they don't literally have the money to be able to do or access certain things, or whether it's actually infrastructure or kind of transport geographical reasons that they just live far away from things and places that they need and services that they need. So to me, you can be kind of marginalized because of kind of those those reasons.
Okay, so being marginalized is really, we're talking about people that live on the edges. And the reason why I always kind of like ask questions about language is it's really interesting that somebody might have a definition or a phraseology or a label, but because somebody else doesn't identify with it, it feels like, oh, they're not talking about me. But when you actually break down and unpick the label, you're like, oh, wait, that is me. So when you talk about marginalized, we're obviously talking about people on the edge, but we're also saying, hey, you're probably on the edge from a sense of it's not easy for you to tap into the system. It's not easy for you to be connected, like in terms of network. So, it's not easy for you to move around. It's not like you can jump on a train and go access the job. There's something stopping you doing that. And potentially you haven't also got a network of people around you that can put you on, people that can connect you to the next opportunity. So from your guys' perspectives, plugging that gap matters. What tends to happen to communities where those people on the edges, if they can be brought in, what's the benefit?
I think, there's kind of loads of benefits. Firstly, I think it's the right thing to do. Like, kind of the thing that drives me the most is literally, I think everyone has the right to kind of benefit from the society that we live in, and, whether it be the kind of socio-economic fruits, or the social fruits or the economic fruits. I think everyone, has the rights to kind of benefit from that. But I think also it makes society a better and easier place to live. So when we pull those people in, those marginalized people in, it kind of relaxes pressures on our social services, potentially on our criminal justice services, potentially, and it just makes society and makes this place, the West Midlands, a more attractive place to live and to invest in. So all around, I just think it makes society better when everyone's kind of pulled up, really.
So in a sense, one way of us measuring if inclusion has worked in this inclusive growth, if we're to measure how it's worked, we technically should be seeing a lesser demand or a slower or reduced demand on social services, potentially.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. You'd hope so. I think what I would say to that, though, it's a kind of wider systems approach, and I don't think the CA or a local authority or one agency has the should kind of bear the burden of that. I think it's a whole system, because even the police, I see the police as like the lead agency for policing, but I think all agencies have a role to play within policing, if that makes sense.
And the CA's Combined Authority.
The CA's Combined Authority. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, definitely. So that could be one metric. You say like a reduction in the kind of pressure.
What are other metrics? And again, I'm not obviously asking you to give anything that's confidential away, but I think for anyone who's trying to lead communities and think about ways to make social change, like how do you measure things that work? Like how do you guys look at measuring things?
I mean, it's an age-old kind of questions, but from a personal level, I think it's looking at how those people that are most affected by inequalities, I suppose, is looking at how their lives are being improved or not being improved. So one area I would look at is the kind of health and well-being of people. Like recently, the Combined Authority, we kind of commissioned a piece of work called the State of the Region Health Report, which basically kind of looks at the impact that coronavirus has had on our communities, but also just looked at wider health indicators. And it kind of shows that there are loads of challenges for this region. So I think from a personal perspective, so health is one area that I would look at to see how, we make our region a more healthy place. To me, is one way of kind of measuring that. So,
yeah. Okay. Because in some senses, I think that idea of measurement, where, like you've just said, especially from the Combined Authority's perspective, you're a unity agency. So you're a uniting entity, and you're trying to do work that gels the Midlands. So although the local authorities will do their own things, you guys have got some ability to do region-wide working.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, there's other things you can consider. So, for instance, it's like we've got levers over transport, so it's kind of use of public transport. We've got levers over adult education, so maybe it's the take up of adult education courses. But I think it's a mixture of indicators, and all of them won't be quantitative. I think some of it will be kind of qualitative stuff as well.
And when you talk about levers, you're talking about you guys have got powers against that. Like you can leverage something, you can make something happen. It's not just sitting pretty. There's an element of bite a bit.
Yeah, so like powers and resources.
Okay, so things like education, etc. And the reason I'm saying all of that is, I'm checking this because when we then looking at, what do we measure? I think very often everyone's like, well, is it as simple as things have gone up or gone down, etc. But actually, like you're saying, sometimes it's what have we lowered? What barriers have we removed in order for something else to occur quicker?
Exactly.
What arrangements or principles have we established in order for everyone to sing from the same hymn sheet? So when you're measuring change, it's really about like you're allowed to think as laterally as you want, but you've got to be consistent in what you measure. Like Absolutely. There's no use us measuring, let's just say, like you said, if the police have their own policing power, but if we just measure things on arrests, it doesn't tell us enough about those people that maybe were planning an offense, but actually we've not dealt with the reason why they were planning an offense. And then all the way to, like, say, with health, even if let's just say there's lower hospital admissions, not knowing where and why the hospital admissions were changing is also quite damaging, because we can't replicate things that work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So that ability to like think laterally and really just reverse engineer the people you're working with is probably a big tick. But we probably come onto that a little bit again, because I think that measurement is really probably where everyone's value is. But as you said, you guys lead other organizations. So is there a secret or a methodology or anything you've seen that's interesting about guiding well-established organizations? Because a lot of people that are listening are at the low level, but maybe they've never thought, wait a minute, some of our organizations have bosses themselves. So what's it like to be in charge of the people in charge?
I mean, I'd probably should say it up front, I wouldn't see us as kind of being in charge per se. I mean, I don't really see it as a kind of vertical relationship. I think I see it more horizontally, and we've all got kind of different responsibilities for things. It's kind of how I would see it. But I think given what our remit is, I think one of the kind of powers, if you'd like that, or abilities that we have, is to kind of convene people, given the areas that we work on. So we're able to kind of bring people together to kind of discuss issues and come up with kind of collective solutions. I mean, one practical example of that now actually is the mayor. He's got a forum, an economic impact of our coronavirus forum, where he's bringing together really senior stakeholders from across the region to say on a weekly basis to look at what's happening in terms of the coronavirus, look at the kind of impact it's having on our region, and then kind of developing actions from there. So whether it's kind of lobbying government or whether it's for organizations to kind of work collectively to do things, coming up with those kind of things. But I suppose the main thing that I would say we do as a combined authority is we start from the outcome. So we look at what a good might looks like, or what we're trying to address, and then we work backwards. From starting from where we think we want to be, we'll then look at the activities that need to take us there, and we'll engage with other organizations on that basis.
So that's a nugget. So let's just do a quick deep dive. That's a beautiful nugget. Like the power of working backwards, it's underrated. And I do think that very often, if someone's looking to get people to start caring, like that's the secret. Like, if somebody's a campaigner around, let's just say, ovarian cancer, all the way to, I mean, I've seen some interesting stuff in I think, is it the King's Heath Facebook groups? So there's some kind of bollard issue that's going on with the road networks in King's Heath. People are not happy. Like, I can guarantee 40 to 160 message threads as soon as somebody does King's Heath traffic post, right? So if someone's then looking to start anyone caring, what's really interesting when you look at some of these threads, it's you've got people that are like, but it's going to help traffic. Other people are like, yeah, but it's going to inconvenience people. I saw one that was like, for me, I don't know why it's stuck in my head, but somebody wrote, I saw a delivery driver / an Amazon driver have to do some weird reversing to kind of, so then I'm like, okay, so this story has got lots of implications. The locals have a few, but also if you're not a local, if you're that delivery driver and you're in a particular arena where a policy change has been executed, which is what these bollards are, then you've actually just got to live with it. You don't know the why, the force, where it started. So weirdly, you've been affected, but if someone's campaigning, they could actually include you in the campaign, but they might not know. So that ability to say, well, let's reverse engineer the problem, I think is really interesting, because you can then ask, wait a minute, guys, what do we want at the end of this? Like, what are we actually complaining about, and what do we want to change? So are there any steps and tips for people, rather than just saying, oh, I've got this problem? How do we start to, how do you break down anything to start to reverse engineer it?
So sorry, is that so breaking down
any problem? So I'm like I said, I just used that King's Heath one because it kind of occurred to me, is like, you guys are all speaking about this particular issue, but no one's reversed engineered what we want. Like what? So you know what I mean? So how do you start at the end rather than starting about, oh my God, I'm unhappy?
Yeah, so I think, like, from our organizational kind of point of view is, we might have an idea of what the outcome might be, but what we try to do, and I'd like to think we do it pretty well, is I think we try and consult along the way. So whenever we're developing a strategy or kind of a piece of research, we will always do like a call for evidence or kind of do a consultation on things. And hopefully then people can kind of feed their views into that, which kind of feeds into our work program. Now, I think maybe one area in which, our organization and other organizations can improve is maybe having that kind of consultation and get to a wider group of people, because sometimes people might, for instance, might have an opinion about things that are changing, but they might have had the opportunity to kind of input a view on that, but they just don't know the mediums of doing so. I'm not saying the King's Heath example is that was the case.
It's just a random one.
Yeah, there are times though where, like, consultations for things will go out, things then change, and people say, why did this change? But then, if you kind of look back at it, people sometimes had an opportunity to kind of at least raise their opinions on that. But maybe it's organizations doing a better job of kind of disseminating kind of consultations and like calls for evidence a wide group maybe. So okay. I think it's about how we get views along the way.
So very often, if we're going to reverse engineer the problem, we actually need to speak to the people that are affected by it.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah,
we need to speak with not just maybe the survivors or the victims or the directly impacted, but all the affiliated bodies. You know what I mean? Yeah, and in one of the things that I do in terms of research is triangulation. So I'm a massive believer, again, from working in behavioral units, working with young people with autism. So that idea of, if I want to do an intervention with said young person, I have to understand where the parents' dynamics lie, and then potentially some kind of key worker or educator or other role models in their lives. And very often everyone's just like, little Stevie is doing this, this, and this. But actually it works to make sure that we say, okay, mum of Stevie, what's your views? Where do you think he needs to get to? Stevie, where do you want to get to? Teacher of Stevie, where do you think he needs to get? And then now hopefully you'll start to see maybe a thematic analysis. So by asking lots of people, you see some themes. And then in the themes, do you guys maybe score the themes to say, oh, wait a minute, this one came up 6 times, 60 times?
Yeah, I mean, there might be some kind of weighting and scoring for different things. But to be fair, I think we do kind of take things on board, and everything's kind of important. But within different strategies and different programs, there might be a kind of weighting of things as well. So
and for this is just my own personal tips, and obviously, like I say, you guys will have your process, but from hearing some of what you'd say, I'd say if I was that person who's now looking to get a campaign going, or like, I've already got people that care about something, but I want to step it up more, I'd be doing these types of thematic analysis where I'd be asking people things to say, well, and I'd be asking things against me personally, time. I always feel like time is a really interesting measure. Time people can commit, and time that people want to see results. I think that's an underrated part of certain types of campaign strategies. Like, how quickly do we all want a result? And then for me, I actually take it back to the communities to say, guys, if you want me to do this in this time, what are you willing to give for it to occur? And that's where, if you want people to care more, in my opinion, that's one key conversation. What are you all willing to give for a result to happen quicker, or for a result to impact more people? Because it's very easy to have just the expectation, which is the complaint. But in the solution is the nuances about commitment, contribution, and things like that. So yeah, just as a summary, I think listening to people, thematic analysis, and then starting to weight how much time things might take in order for for a particular program, project, intervention, or invention to occur. I think that's an underrated approach. And then obviously there's resources that people need to think about as well. Like, what's it going to take to support people with these things? So that's just my 2 pence worth from lived experience. So we talked about how you said it diplomatically. You say you convene a round table of the big boys. So you're not their bosses, you're not telling them what's going on, but you're basically facilitating that. Like, how do small enterprises get into the room? And how can they make the most of your opportunities?
So small enterprises, I think, again, I don't think we kind of discriminate in terms of size of organizations. A lot of the times it might just depend on the issue that we're kind of discussing. And, for as an example, there might be a case that there's an umbrella organization that kind of represents the smaller organizations. So thinking of maybe some small enterprises.
Probably churches works like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it might be a case of accessing the room via a kind of larger umbrella organization potentially. But again, though, it's about kind of communicating the routes to being able to do that. But also, I mean, there is the room, and there's actually, I mean, there's the kind of wider room concept. So for instance, we do a lot of research, and we do call for evidence a lot of times on things. So when we do that call for evidence, I think that's an opportunity to actually impact what we do. So I mean, a recent example of that actually is a piece of work that we're doing now, which basically looks at how civil society and how kind of enterprises responded to the coronavirus pandemic. And specifically, we wanted to hear from kind of community organizations to kind of help us shape that work. So that's one way in which kind of smaller enterprises can access that's
where they got a chance. So I mean, you may not have it to the top of your head, because I understand obviously when you're working in a big organization, sometimes the micro processes aren't always known to you. But so as an example there, like, where should small enterprises be looking so that they can hear these opportunities? Because really, it's probably the other side of this question is, what techniques do you guys use to reach the small enterprises? So how do they, knowing now that you've got a room for them, how do you guys go about letting people know that the doors are open or there's an opportunity?
Yeah, I suppose one way we try to kind of communicate that is through our media and social media team. So
follow.
Yeah, follow. Have a look at our website. Have a look at what we're doing to see how potentially you can work with us. But I mean, there is one way actually, and it's not the most obvious way, but it's potentially a way that is probably overlooked. So a lot of times when we're working on things, like for instance, if we've got an ask of government, or if there's like the budget coming up, or if there's the spending review coming up, we might, as a combined authority kind of partnership, which includes local enterprise partnerships, local authorities, we might publish the asks that we have of government on our website or make it public. So for instance, in July, after the coronavirus, when coronavirus kind of really hit home, we kind of did a package to government, an investment case to government to say, we ideally need £3.2 billion over a certain amount of years to kind of deal with the challenges that we're facing within our region. And then again, after that, there was a spending review. We then submitted again an investment case of a number of programs which said we could do this amount of investment to kind of help us overcome these challenges. Now, the reason why I raised that is one of the kind of submissions that we made in our spending review submission was around business support and how we support so like ethnic minority-owned businesses and female-owned businesses. Now, if that submission is successful to government and we get that money, then as a kind of partnership, if we get that money, that then links into smaller community organizations, because we're getting that money to kind of support smaller community organizations, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I suppose if it's kind of keeping abreast of what we're doing and then seeing how your organization might be linked into the programs that we're trying to develop.
Okay, so there's probably 2 or 3 things there. One is interesting, is that sometimes you guys have to fish for money as well. So it's not just the small guys that have to kind of keep asking government to say, hey, look at us. And then obviously you're saying that the onus is relatively on the organizations to kind of just, keep a looking. So right now I'll just give the Twitters. So on Twitter, it's westmids_CA.
Yep.
And on Facebook, it's West Midlands CA.
Yep.
So those are the social media ways, and then the emails. And then if somebody does tweet or email, I'm guessing that they'd probably get a reply about who to contact by email.
Yeah, potentially. I think in terms of getting a response back to a contact, you might be better off kind of going through our website for that, because I think there's like a dedicated
team. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, and that's West Midlands Combined Authority.org. WMCA.org.uk. Yeah, so WMCA.org.uk. So that's useful for anyone to say, look, if you do want to be plugged in, the onus is there. Now, obviously, since COVID, etc., and there are people that are kind of, basically because of COVID, there are church groups that have come together, other types of small businesses, etc. So those bridge organizations that do come in, do you guys so if somebody is invited in the room as a bridge organization, and again, there's it's just a general kind of a thinking, that bridge organization is ideally there to kind of pass it on to the smaller people. Do they get any kind of guidance in doing a good job in that? Or
I would say there is guidance, but again, I would probably preach that it's more kind of collective guidance. So if we're bringing a bunch of faith organizations together, which the mayor is actually doing at the minute, he's got a steering group of faith organizations. I think it's a kind of collective. We're here together in the room. Let's think about where we're trying to get to, and let's think of the solutions. So it's a kind of, and then we'll collectively kind of suggest some things to kind of do going forward. So in short, yes, but I would like to think it's a more kind of joint up process of we're in the room together, we're coming up with the solutions together, and the CA will kind of provide any help along the way.
And I think this is now just me speaking as an organization. I think this is also where we as communities also need to probably step up in terms of who we allow to represent us. I think that there's a responsibility even with us to be saying and asking a little bit more, to say, well, if someone's got it on their LinkedIn that they're the assembly member of this or the other, or they're part of this forum, I think it's also on us to be saying, okay, well, when are you gonna come on a Facebook Live, mate, or an Instagram Live, mate, to tell us what you've just learned or what's being discussed, etc. And aspects of that is also the fact that when we are looking at that, just communication. So does the social media do that, etc. And then when we're now looking at post-COVID and in terms of policy, what do you think people should be aware of, that any policy changes that that are being rethunk, that were rethought out, that that community should know about?
So I think post kind of COVID, I think there are a number of things that are going to be common for organizations. So whether you're a LEP, whether you're an organization like yourself, community interest group, company like yourself, I think kind of jobs and kind of economic recovery is going to be a big thing. So obviously, like, a lot of people have lost, and especially with young people, actually, because it's estimated that up to 1 million young people might become unemployed. So I think there'll be a real focus on upskilling young people to get them into work, also getting young people back into work who have lost their jobs, and also kind of preparing young people for future jobs in kind of the green economy as it kind of grows and emerges. So I think that's going to be a big thing. And there's also linked to that, there's about kind of supporting businesses to make sure they're able to kind of recover. And you'll see a lot of that from this region, with kind of civic leaders kind of lobbying government and trying to work together to kind of support our business base to basically stay afloat. So I think that will continue. From my perspective, actually, one thing I would like to see is how we can utilize the energy and kind of willingness of organizations like yourself and other organizations to kind of deliver things, and how we can utilize community groups more in the space of like delivery. So for instance, can community organizations take over some services that local authorities used to provide, just to kind of provide some assistance, so that kind of community asset transfer type of stuff. So I think that will be that is one thing I would like to kind of see. Another big thing in terms of policy, and you've probably seen it yourself, the government is kind of pushing this 2050, I think it is, zero carbon aspiration. Now the CA also has its own 2041 aspiration, and that is to kind of basically decarbonize the region, to make us carbon neutral by 2041. So I think, so if we go back to how we were working backwards, if we think about, for us, 2041 as the outcome of being carbon neutral, I think everything we do up until then will work towards that. So I think all of our programs that we're developing will have some kind of sustainability kind of angle to it as well. So that's another big thing I think to be aware of. And then another thing that I'd kind of put together in a group is to address inequity and the kind of inequalities that we've seen kind of played out. So I think COVID-19 has kind of highlighted some of the kind of long-standing issues that we know that some communities face in terms of just inequity and inequality, and I think that really needs to be addressed. So for instance, thinking about young people, for instance, who are doing homeschooling during COVID, but they can't really do it properly because they haven't got the digital equipment that they need to do it. So that's both the kind of infrastructure, the actual device that they need, and maybe the infrastructure that sits beneath that. Maybe their broadband isn't the best. So I think it's thinking about ways of how we address those kind of challenges, because ultimately it will play out in society going forward. It's going to cost us in the long term if we don't address these issues, because those young people potentially could fall behind, and it could, as it could lead to a lot of things. Them having lower skills and not having access to employment.
More marginalisation.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just a cycle, isn't it? So I think that's the main thing I would like to see us kind of address, is those kind of inequities that exist.
So that's really useful. So like I say, in that kind of context, or the vein of starting people to, or helping people to start caring more, if we start to unpick some of what you were talking about, we're now in the midst of saying, wait guys, when it comes to jobs, we really need to care more. It's not like we need to start caring. We already know there's a jobs issue, and we've always had people that have had campaigns around employment, but this is now wait a minute, this is cataclysmic potentially. So that whole idea of care more, if there are social enterprises there that are really like into the entrenchment of employment, really entrenched in the world of getting people into employment, whether it's nuanced ways, whether it's discrete ways, etc., this is their time to step up. Is that fair to say? Okay. Absolutely. So that's the whole, that's a care more starter campaign. Then we've got to understand that businesses are part of communities. So for businesses, obviously it's cyclical, because businesses employ people. So for businesses, this is also we actually need to kind of care more, because right now it's not good enough to say, because of Corona's business has gone badly. The community needs businesses to innovate. So if you can't step up, the consequence of you not stepping up is not actually just about you as an employer or a business. There's a wider ramification. The supply chain also matters, because when, I don't know, I won't even say bakery, because food businesses have gone quite well, but I think events has been a really interesting one. So as an events venue, your security guards, your cleaners, all of those people can't do much. However, if an events venue turns itself into some kind of socially distanced crest temporarily, security guard still now has a game, is still in play, and the cleaners are still in play. Yes, your venue's no longer, producing ABBA and the greatest hits comebacks tours, but you're still in that business of helping the community, because your asset is space. So I think that's a really good point. And then when we're talking about sort of the green world and the Green Deal, from your perspective, where are we in that? Are we in a get people to start caring world, or is there a care more, or sorry, is it a keep caring or care more?
I think it's potentially maybe do more. I would say. I think people do care, and people like myself, I do care. And funny enough, I was talking to my wife about this morning. I think it's maybe do more, I would say, and practically doing more, really. Just knowing the ways that we can kind of play our part in doing things. And like, it's funny you raised that actually, because me and my wife were kind of talking about that this morning. But definitely do more, and knowing how to do more, I would say, is where we are.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I do think for the most part people do care about it, but it's then taking that practical action, isn't it? The next step.
Yeah, this is it, right? Yeah. And then from your sort of perspective, the journey of you with the organization was like, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. What were your ambitions, and how did you get to this position of really helping to make a change for people?
I mean, so 15, 20 years ago, so mid-teens, I don't know, I think, and I give a lot of it to my parents, really. I've always kind of been motivated by fairness and things being fair, and not just equal, but being fair for everyone. And I think that was kind of driven by also lived experiences and stuff. Like, so I think I always look at it like I was always okay. Like my parents, always provided for me and stuff, and always did okay in school and all that type of stuff. But some of my friends who I saw as having like the same potential as me, or even more potential, for some reasons they just kind of went different routes. And I think, the older I got in my teens, that kind of motivated me a lot, because then I would see younger kids who I could see that they were going down the same route as some of my friends. And I was motivated by, not wanting to see that happen. And in my teens, actually, that led to me doing some kind of mentoring for Walsall Council, where I grew up, to try and
Where did you go to school?
I went to Allenwell Comprehensive School in Walsall, which I think now is called the West Walsall Academy.
Okay. And is that secondary?
Yeah, secondary. Yeah. Secondary.
And then for A level?
For A level, same school. Stayed in the same school.
Okay.
But and so stayed in the same school for A levels. Studied RE, did English, economics, and that was it, I think. So yeah, all kind of motivated by my wanting to kind of learn more about society, and I don't know, do more. At that point, I didn't know what job I wanted to do or anything, to be honest. So did my A levels, went to university again. Still didn't quite know what I wanted to do, but
which uni?
I went to the University of Birmingham.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, so stayed local. I went to the University of Birmingham.
Kept it cheap.
Yeah. To be fair, I probably shouldn't say this, but Manchester was my first choice, but I didn't get in. So yeah, Birmingham was my second choice. So went there, did a degree in public policy, government and management, because I wanted to see practically how kind of politics had an impact on the lives of people, is the way I see public policy. It's, everyone has, I'm sure people have their political, interests and views and stuff, but I was more interested in the practical application of politics. So that's why I kind of did public policy. So from there, ended up working for Solihull Council for a while in a research role in the economic development department. Then moved on from there to the Black Country Consortium, the Black Country Local Enterprise Partnership, in a research role, again, kind of looking at the region and seeing what the trends were, and then kind of making recommendations around how we could improve the lives of people. But I won't go through all my roles, but basically
I mean, like, obviously share as much as you wish, because what's really interesting is there's some amazing parallels between even my experience and yours, but also I think you're charting what careers potentially look like. So I think there'll be some people that need to see and hear some of this. Right, so share as much as you're willing to.
Yeah, so kind of did those kind of research roles from our kind of first two jobs, and actually, and a step before that, actually, when I finished university, I actually worked for a charity for a while, in Walsall, a community development charity that was kind of seeking to engage with young people and improve the lives of young people. They were kind of big lottery.
Are they still around?
No, they're not actually, and they didn't last long. When I kind of came at the end of the project, unfortunately. And by then, the project wasn't salvageable, given some of the stuff that had happened before, in terms of us not actually collecting the metrics that we needed to prove. So I was there, and I was trying to basically backdate and do research to kind of prove to the big lottery fund that this project was worth carrying on with. And part of that actually was probably my experience. I mean, I was 21, probably didn't have all the tools I needed to kind of approach to approach it and do it in a better way.
All the ambition, but not enough of the
not enough
tools,
know-how and skills. Yeah, so unfortunately, and to this day, I do regret, and I wish that project could have kind of kept on, because it's in an area of water that needs that development. So worked for that charity, worked in those kind of researchy roles, but I've always kind of been, more interested in the policy side of things. I think research is good as well, and research informs policy, but I wanted to have a more direct impact on policy. So I went to the Gambling Commission, actually, which regulates gambling in the country, to get some policy experience. Worked there in their social responsibility team, which is basically trying to make gambling operators more responsible. So worked on a number of policy areas there. Then, as we spoke about earlier, I went over to the Police and Crime Commissioner's office in the West Midlands, but my role actually was to work as a regional policy officer. So I worked for 4 police and crime commissioners in the West Midlands region. And that, again, was to kind of bring policies together within the region to kind of facilitate and help joint up working in policing across the region. Because actually, and a lot of people don't actually know this, but police forces within regions have a duty to collaborate. So my role essentially was to kind of help the PCCs fulfill that function of having their forces collaborate. So that was kind of my role there. And then after that, I kind of fancied going back into economic development, and saw the role at the Combined Authority for the senior policy officer position. Applied for that and was lucky enough to kind of get that. And that's kind of where I'm at now. And I kind of see myself in this space for a little while, especially given where we are with COVID, and given the kind of levers that the Combined Authority has. I'd like to be in this position to kind of be able to shape some of the interventions that we kind of implement going forwards.
Okay. And then anything kind of beyond yet? Any kind of international thoughts?
What? Sorry, in terms of what? In terms of
just like next, just any other roles, or you kind of like, well, let's just see what happens.
No, I think for now I'd see myself being in the UK, but I'm more than open to kind of.
You're like, if anyone has got anything going in, I don't know, Mauritius, Cayman Islands, anywhere hot.
I probably need to convince my wife, but actually she might need less convincing these days. I'm definitely up for kind of experiencing new things and new places.
Excellent. Well, what was really interesting about everything you said is there's some incredible parallels between your life and my life. So interestingly, I went to Queen Mary's Grammar School.
Okay. Oh wow.
Just for A levels. So part of my kind of story and backstory was born in London, came here for secondary school, and the secondary school that I ended up in was predominantly like white in Sandwell, right? So there were 2 black males in my year.
Oh, wow. What was the name of your school?
Bristol Hall.
Bristol. No, I don't know Bristol. No.
Yeah, this is Sandwell. Yeah. So 2 black males, and this is, like I say, you'll hear some incredible parallels. By year 11, the other black male gets kicked out of school. There, the other one, so me and him. So he was a promising kickboxer, promising footballer. Arguably, I think he would say, his family were linked with, I think probably Burger Bar, but I can't fully remember. But his family were linked with that. But for whatever reason, something happened back in like year 10. A laser got shone in the teacher's eye. Teacher goes blind. There were 4 boys that were affiliated with it. Not blinded, but teacher's got damage in his eye. 4 boys were affiliated. He was definitely expelled. And I believe the others were maybe suspended, and somehow it was kind of all blamed on him. It went back and forth, and there was a lot of injustice and all of that. However, it then hit me. I was like, but I know him and I know he's a good guy, but all of these antics or whatever have now screwed him over. His reputation preceded him. The school back then, no doubt they couldn't wait to get rid of young people. I mean, even when I became a teacher, I was seeing how schools could literally fabricate anything. So long story short, I could see the same injustice as yourself, and I could see that, for me, again, this is now one person's opinion. One of my biggest frights and the biggest things that occurred to me is me getting out of Sandwell and maybe even quote unquote Black Country West Midlands. I believe there's a Sandwell mentality, and I believe that we need to work harder to break it. The potential in that region is untapped. All the young people have aspirations, but I've seen it get chipped away because there's not enough of an obsession. This is one person's opinion, an obsession at local authority level with where we can get our young people. I think there's a lot of people that sit on panels, etc., that are well-meaning, but the level of innovation, like we've just said, like I was giving a story later, when people are close to the bottom, meaning like Sandwell's one of the most deprived regions in lots of statistics, the entropy, the level of energy that you need to recover is disproportionate. You cannot have average will to get people out of a gutter. So this is, like I say, this is my opinion, nobody else's, and this is my lived experience. So I don't see enough of that obsession at that local authority. And until I left to go uni, I did not see, oh my God, this is how other people put their lives together. This is how other people use structure to get there, and etc. But anyway, like I'll quickly stick to our kind of the parallel. So I go to grammar school in Warsaw, and the boys were talking on a different level. So I'm sitting around with loads of boys, obviously just a pure boys school. I've come from a comprehensive school, mixed, where the girls are trying to like get with me as like the head boy and trying to like, even like, you know, I can't name too many, but
if you say so, kid,
like, you know what I mean? You know what I mean?
I believe you.
So you're in grammar school and everyone's like gathering and everyone's like, oh, like, so this is in grammar school. There's something called CCF, Combined Cadets Force. So they all, you know, little soldiers. And everyone's like, oh, guys, you know what? One day we should rob the IMF, International Monetary Fund. That's not let's go and rob the corner shop.
Yeah, not the corner shop.
Like that's like in comp school, it's like, oh yeah, who's going to go and get a Twix and a Skittles and a chump, exactly. 10p chump or a 5p chump. Yeah. People are trying to like, you know, it's like I've never shoplifted, and God is my witness, right? But you go grammar school and no one's even thinking small. It's like, how do we go and do the biggest robbery known to man as like 17 and 18-year-olds, right? Yeah. And then I go to uni. So interestingly, I went to Leeds, and obviously Leeds. And this is just, again, I'm a uni connoisseur. I've been to 4. I didn't repeat first year, but I have actually been to 4, paid my money 4 different times. Right. So I always found that Leeds for me was a perfect university, and I always give this guidance to people. Like for me, I'm not a super geek, but neither am I just like a dosser. So I've always needed an experience where I can be with the intellectuals that have lived experience. Leeds was perfect. Leeds was all the kids that couldn't get into Queen Mary's, St. Andrews, Durham, but they could get into Leeds. They knew how to party a bit, and they also knew kind of how to study, and they were incredibly ambitious. If I told you at least 4 of my friends work for Adobe, like high up in Adobe, like early 2008s, 9s, Facebook. Who else? One of my best friends is a yacht salesman in Monaco. So we were like study and party kind of thing. And I think Manchester was very similar. Like I feel like Manchester is where you went when all the other certain ones won't take you. Whereas I feel like UOB, that's a geeks university.
I don't know. You say that if people at Adobe will tell you, I'm no academic, I'm no geek. Like there were times where I needed to kind of get my down to make it through. Yeah. But, you know what? Luckily, actually, I had a really good lecturer, Pauline Jass, on my course. I remember actually she got me and one of my close friends. And I think it was at the beginning of our second year, and she said, "Listen, boys, really like you as people, but you know things need to be better.
Buckle up,
better with these grades." So definitely, I think I can kind of relate to where you are actually.
And then kind of talking to the injustice, that really motivated me. So at uni, I started being a mentor, and I got lucky enough to be a mentor of the year. Wow. But me and some friends also used to kind of dabble in events and event management. So definitely good 3 or 4 boys would kind of run a night, and then they'd bring me as the marketing guy, or at least just even advice. From a young age, I was blessed with clarity of thought. So people would come to me with complexities, and I'd break them down, simplify that I don't know what. But like I think again for me, I was taught to listen more than you speak. So that made me very awake, where I'm in a situation, but I don't get absorbed by the situation. I can actually reflect and see my surroundings. So very often I was then almost like a very early consultant. But I used to, so from doing events, we ended up doing what's known as experiential marketing. So I started to do stuff with Vodafone, Xbox Connect, all of that. But from becoming mentor of the year at the same time, I also went down a teaching route. And like you said about injustice, I then started to apply my injustice to say, when I was the mentor, I was talking to young people to say, hey, by the way, yes, I'm at uni, but I'm also a doorman, and I also kind of run events with friends, and we do all this other thing. In the real world, this is what happens. You know what I mean? So you think it's about your teacher right now. That's your teacher's going to get paid and going to move on with their life.
Yep.
When I go back to uni, all my friends literally say stuff like this. So not even my friends, but even like I'd be a uni student and a doorman. So when I'm a doorman, people would literally go to you, I'm studying medicine and I'm going to be a doctor and I'm going to be a solicitor. And where are you going to be in 15 years time? I don't think you're going to be anywhere, mate. But they don't know I'm also at uni. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I've been in a queue with some of those people. Like,
right?
Yeah.
So I'm telling the young people, by the way, like there are people around us that can't wait to defecate on you more. They're not like trying. So if you think your teacher's the problem, like you've got it twisted. You've got to develop whatever your solutions are to go move forward, but don't try and make the system exclude you even more. So those types of talks is what I was having with young people. But also I'm like, if you want to make money, here's how you go and make money. Here's what people actually pay for. Here's how your community could do, because I've always been entrepreneurial. So in that injustice, I went into teaching, wanted to look into behavioral units, worked with autism schools, worked with prison schools, and that injustice was always with me. And that's where I then figured out, no one teaches humans how the brain works.
Nope.
So we all expect someone to get an A, but we don't know why they got an A star or a C. We don't truly know. We don't know, you know what I mean? But once they've got the grades, we make things occur. And then also, how do people fall into, why is it cyclical that domestic violence can happen across generations? Why is poverty something that can happen across generations? And again, I'm a big believer that the brain's really an impactful part of it. So very much, it's really interesting that we both saw the injustice and went, particularly different ways about solving it. You know what I mean? I definitely kind of concur, and that's why for me, my thing today is let's help people understand what this machine does, because this unit runs everything. Everything. Does. You know what I
mean, from my lived experience, what I would say to young people, I mean, like I give my parents a lot of credit. Like I'll give, both my parents have kind of drive. My dad has, a lot of drive and works hard. And my mom, she's robust. Like anything could be happening around her. It will happen. She might look down for a sec, then it's okay.
Back up.
How are we going to solve this? How are we going to solve the problem? So I give them credit. So I had that base, which was good. Also had four sisters. So having four sisters, I always tell people, was like having 5 moms, because there's 4 older sisters that I was a baby boy. So I had a kind of good, really, really good support system. But also, I think, like yourself, really, I was really kind of good at listening and translating kind of actions and behaviors. And the older I got, I kind of recognized how to kind of maneuver and kind of go through places and make it through life. And I think even with teachers actually at school, I think, I wasn't like a naughty or a bad kid at school, but, I kind of messed about a lot, like 13, 14, 15. But by the time I got to 16, and I was doing A-levels and stuff, I kind of realized that there's a certain maturity that you needed to approach teachers with. And once I kind of recognized that and did that, some of the teachers who I thought didn't like me, actually, I became like their favorite student. And I was like staying behind after class and having conversations. And that kind of helped develop my thinking and the way I maneuvered through life. I mean, at that time of life as well, 16, 17, 18, I had cane rows in my hair. I don't know if you remember, I was wearing, do you remember FUBU?
Oh, yeah.
So I was FUBU'd out. I was wearing a lot of FUBU, and like maybe, and given, the neighborhoods and friends that I had at the time, that might have contributed to me being stopped by the police like quite a few times. But again, like given the advice and stuff I got from my family and my mom and my dad and all that, like I was able to know how to kind of speak to police officers, how to kind of maneuver those conversations, and and potentially de-escalate situations to the point where I was having reasonable conversations with police officers at like 16, 17, like articulately asking them why I'm being stopped, and kind of explaining to them why it might be seen as profiling and all that type of stuff. At that time I didn't know that that's what I was doing, but I think the experiences and the support I had from my family kind of helped me to maneuver through life. Because like I said, I've had a lot of friends that I grew up with that could be sitting in this position as well that are not. And it's, maybe, and there's various reasons for it, but You know,
Well, very
yeah,
quickly, and I know because, like, obviously, we're probably coming to the end. So I'm
yeah,
really
yeah,
interested in this bit. This is now just pure lived experience
yeah.
versus
This
lived
is
experience, right?
yeah,
So, you've really articulated about 3 or 4 things, which is our makers,
yeah,
our parents,
yeah.
have a massive role in modeling and role modeling,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah,
the conversations that are had with us when no one is looking
yep.
make a difference.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I'm just brought up by my mum alone, right?
Hmm.
But the level to which my mum was paranoid about my conduct was probably one of the saving graces.
Yeah,
But because,
we've got the same one. We've got the same
bruh,
one.
so my mum was always like, as soon as you leave this door, remember your surname and remember that wherever your surname goes, your brand goes, wherever your behavior goes, right? So you got this constant paranoia. It was like, oh, I can't let the family down. Like, you know what I mean? Da, 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 da.
Absolutely.
But then like you've kind of also then alluded to, is that when you've then got that power of your mouth
Hmm.
to be able to speak, explain, articulate, that's underrated.
Yeah,
And
yes.
weirdly, you don't need to be an amazing lyricist, but just your parents helping you to practice
Yeah.
standing up for yourself in a non-rude way, in a
Hmm.
non-confrontational way, in the ability to manage injustice
Yeah.
and understand that maybe you don't have to have that justice right now, that sometimes some people are going to get a few wins over you,
Yeah. Yeah.
but as long as you don't die, you can
Hmm.
recorrect. Like, so all of those inner talks, I think, is some of the things where there's got to be a smarter way to harness it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And especially for maybe people of minorities that maybe don't fit in, but I think this applies to anyone, that how your parents guide you, talk to you, reflect with you
Yeah.
matters. It just really matters.
It
Like,
does really
a
does.
lack of conversation is not a lack of conversation is not a good it's not a good practice,
No,
really.
it's not.
Like, even if you think your kids have heard it all before, tell them
Tell
again,
them again. Yeah. Absolutely.
because your TV channel is giving them, like, I one summer, I remember one of these summers, because one of my first jobs was kind of working for a cufflink manufacturer, Softfuss Lamborn, and they used to support a brand, and I'm just a weirdo. I like to just count and measure. One day, when Nelly and Kelly
Okay.
Dilemma
Yeah.
was
Yeah. I
number
remember that.
one, that
2002.
summer, yeah, okay, excellent. That summer, I was working in a factory, and I just decided to count how many times that song comes on in a day
Right.
across all the channels that we changed to. So I
Okay.
think back then I had my own Walkman, and I could hear the factory floor radio, as it were, and I heard that song 18 times that day.
Wow.
And it occurred to me that if somebody else is pushing their propaganda, their work, their music, their
Hmm.
advert, whatever, at me 18 times a day,
Yeah.
a parent needs to be doing 67 times a
Yeah.
day,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
someone's going to get into my head whether I like it or not.
Yep.
Why isn't it my own family's voice?
Hmm.
Right. So that's where I kind of think it's underrated, the power of families having consistent conversations
Yep.
to the point where it becomes culture, and then it's not
Yep.
like nagging. It's
Yep.
nagging when you've never said anything, and then you start
Exactly.
saying something, and then the kid's like, wait a minute, you ain't
Yep.
consistent, right?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
then kind of to the tail end of some of that, because that's just my kind of thoughts. But you now said that you're very good at articulating. You said that you now understand that power of when you're around people of power or police and influence, that you can reason with.
Yep.
Where do you think our role and responsibility lies as other black males that have also lived it and know things? And like you mentioned, Fubu is for us by us, and it's a
Yeah.
black owned brand by a
Hmm.
guy called Damon John. He's now a millionaire. He wrote a book called The Power of Broke.
Hmm.
But I've never read it, but the logic when he describes it, I always say to people, when you've got nothing, enjoy it. It
Yeah.
feels like everything's against you, but
Hmm.
I've been in positions where I've got nothing, and my braveness.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can't wait to go back to nothing again. I'm not gonna lie, because the lack of audacity and the lack of shame and the lack of overthinking that I have allows me to actually move forward.
Yeah.
I perform better when I've got nothing to lose, but
Yeah.
it's the very hard psychology that he's trying to get across, to
Yeah.
say that when you are broke, you are more likely to be resourceful. When
Hmm.
you are broke, you're more likely to overthink and care
Yeah.
less about what people think. Caring about what people think holds a lot of people back. Overthinking holds a lot of people back. So there is a power in being broke. Yes, you don't want to stay broke, but for the 5-10 minutes or 5 years that you're down, do the right things in the right order to recover. Anyway, so that's just about FUBU. But back to what you're saying, what do you think our role and position is in potentially helping to, I wouldn't say maybe even rectify, but how do we pull others up? And what ages do you think we should be looking at? Should we be looking at those that are 30 something our age that can actually, because we've got a like for like race, haven't we? If someone's 30 something now, we know exactly what happened every year up until now. So should we be trying to pull them up, or should we be focusing on the 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds or the 18-year-olds?
Yeah, at some point it's probably everyone, but I think if I'll take your question. Like, so the way I see it was, you mentioned bridge organizations earlier. You're talking about churches and stuff. I would almost see people like me and you as kind of bridges between probably younger people and bridges between the organizations that have an impact on those young people's lives. So it's us that we've had those kind of lived experiences. Like I worked in policing. I should be able to speak on behalf of, not as a kind of community leader or anything, but just using my own lived experiences to kind of communicate to the kind of criminal justice system, but also looking back at youngsters to maybe be able to kind of explain what the journey that they might be going on that they don't know that they're at the start of as well. So there is that. And not saying that I'm an old man now, but I don't know how a 12, 13-year-old might react to me. So maybe our role as 30-something is kind of some things is kind of motivating those younger ones that are 20-somethings to get them to kind of mentor the younger ones. Because definitely it starts from an early age now. And I think it's starting earlier with kids now, where they know the world and they've got access to technology and the internet. So you're looking at kids 9, 10, 11 now, is kind of like a 15-year-old from maybe our generation in terms of the knowledge and stuff that they have. So I think the younger you can get kids and get into their brains is the better, I would say.
Yeah, a quadrillion percent getting into someone's mind. I mean, I always feel a bit weird kind of saying it, but literally humans are susceptible to mind control. I think there's an element of us owning it and appreciating it and just wrapping it with ethics. But the whole point of the human brain is it's meant to be written over. It's a hard drive. So if I grew up in Greece, I'd have a hard drive written into me that allows me to assimilate into Greek culture. There's only so much that we can say. We need to leave people to be who they want to be. I actually think you have to do a little bit of hardware writing into them in order for them to also go and live their best life, and things like that. But one thing that you're saying, when it comes to that kind of guidance, so let's help the 20-somethings in order for them to help the teens.
And we can help the teens as well, but I'm just,
they may not respond, right?
They might or might not, but, like, I'm not saying we're old, but people might look at
No, we're old. We're old.
We're old.
Okay. Yeah, we're old, man. We're ancient.
Imagine you trying to, from your bouncer days, imagine you trying to explain to a 12-year-old what garage music is.
You know what I mean? I was like, guys, man, and it was like,
when Miss Dynamite was running things.
Right, but very kind of like quickly with that, I think in that pulling people up, this is now just me. I see a weird frustration though for those of our age that maybe they have been pen and they've been through things. When I try and give guidance, I feel that there are still some males with lived experience that still want to do it their way, even though I can sit before them. And so one of the things I say to young people is, I was like, especially young people that are thinking about going down the road lifestyle and all that. I'm like, boys, I can sit down for 2 hours and write a bid and bring in 10 grand. You show me your road man, and you show me the man that's shot in and all of that can do the same in 2 hours and sleep at night. So I'm like, exactly. Boys, like, if you don't even want to if you don't want to follow me, I hear you, but who do you know that can bring in big figures, six figures? I told you I raised 100, and I'm saying this out of not to brag, but just as a lived experience mixed with like, what more do I have to do to tell you that there is a route here where I'm saying I bought in £150,000 to help 100 people get therapy. That is one person that's doing stuff. I'm more than willing to teach you. Just come and sit in my office. I'll order you all the food that you need. Let's chat. Let me show you the system and let you bring you in, right? Young people, they're cool with that. Some of the grown-ups, seem to get either intimidated by that, or they've got their own story and their own narrative. And then I look, a year on, and I always say to people, my best measure is watch me every year. And if I'm in the same place, I've screwed up. And I don't even always mean growth or, size. It could be depth of understanding, new knowledge, all of that. But there is no 2 years that any human has ever met me where you can say Kit is still there. You might not know the full story, or or I've not told you what you need to know. But I've seen people that I've met in 2004. Let's just say in this social enterprise world. I joined it in 2013, really. Yeah. And then I took over as SpyFU 2016 is when the paperwork was signed, but 2017 is when I got to work. So we went from minus 10K, like literally with the accountant and everything, it was like, here's all the hidden debts that you didn't know about. Here's all there's obviously no contracts or whatever. And now we're going to be crossing, a few 100,000, yada, 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 right? Yeah. So that's pure lived experience. And no one knows me. I know you don't know me. No, I'm not in anyone's chamber of commerce. Right. I'm not in anyone's church association. I'm not in any institute of this or that. I get invited to small stuff, but literally up until this year is when more people have started to be like, oh, who is this weird guy? Like that's doing stuff without permission, right? Yeah. Like no permission, in the room, getting around and owning minds and basically saying, look, like here's another alternative, but also look what I've built. I didn't wait to be told what to build. I went and built it, and now I'm showing you my homework. So I'm trying to say, when it comes to our peers that won't listen, or that still feel, or they're not truly let go of the road, what can we do?
Oh, that's a tough one,
because you're in the room with government, I'm in the room where the money's at, and I'm saying, hey guys, humble ourselves, chill out a little bit, be willing to take a step back. Like I always say, in order to jump, you have to crouch. No human's ever been able to jump without having to crouch. Yeah. And this motion seems to stop people moving forward. They just feel like they can't go like this. They can't go backwards. And I'm like, you're not really going backwards. You're positioning. Anyway, I'll be quiet. Over to you.
No, I mean, it's a tough one. Not saying I've got the solution, but I mean, part of it might be in kind of getting those people to kind of see themselves as shaping the path. Because maybe, and I'm not saying you do this or I do this, but given the way we speak about things and the advice that we might be giving to people, they might see it as, this guy's kind of preaching to me, and he's telling me what the solution is, rather than like asking me for my opinion, or like us kind of like developing a solution together. So I think that could be one kind of issue. Sometimes it's just not an ego thing. Maybe the fear of like failing. People they've lived their lives a certain way for a certain period of time, and to kind of like go another route might be be seen as he used to do that, and look at him, he's here preaching to my younger brother, or whatever it might be. So there's that kind of fear of like being seen as a failure in your world, or that's potentially an issue. And part of it is probably just down to ego, and probably linked to the last point that I just made. Really, it's kind of hard, to once you get to a certain period in life. That's why I think the younger you can get people, the easier it becomes, because people might think that their way is going to work until it doesn't. So until you're like locked away in prison for life, or even if you until you die or something, like people might think like still got a chance. So
still got a chance.
Yeah, I've still got a chance. I've been doing this for 20 years in the same.
Yeah. It's like, this is my year. But, this is the year.
This is the year. So, yeah, I think a bunch of those things really. But in terms of how we go about doing it, I think having those conversations is definitely a starting point. But kind of making people feel like they're part of the solution and part of developing the solutions.
Yeah. And what role do you think females have in this? Because obviously a lot of what I'm saying is probably directed at probably Black and Asian males mostly, because that's just who tends to kind of come around me, etc. But one thing I've definitely, I mean, my organizations are all literally about 80% female. And that's just because I'm a big believer. I just need a brain. Like I actually don't care who you are, where you come from. I just need your brain. And I find that for whatever reason, like how I do stuff works better with females. Do you think that there's a role there where maybe females can coach and teach males better?
Absolutely, definitely. Like I mentioned before, you probably see the theme. I mentioned my mom. I mentioned my 4 sisters. And the teachers that I was referring to about at school, like there was a lot of them were female. Definitely, I think in speaking as a Black man and I was a young Black boy, definitely females have definitely had more of an impact on my life. Love my dad and all that, and respect everything he does and says. But I would definitely say females play a really, really strong and have a role in our communities. Because especially when things go wrong, it's the females a lot of times that pick up the pieces. So definitely they have or should have more of a role in kind of, helping to shape our lives. Definitely, I can, in thinking about even in my career today, the roles I'm thinking back to, I can think of the females that have helped me to get to where I'm at. So when I worked at Solihull Council, I wasn't a very good research analyst, but a woman called Katie Judge kind of showed some faith in me, and her manager, Rachel Westwood, showed some faith in me. And they kind of helped me to progress to my next role at the Black Country Consortium, where I was managed by another female, Delma Dwight, who, again, kind of, helped shape me to become who I am. Went to the Police and Crime Commissioner's office that I mentioned earlier, and, Alethea Fuller, again, kind of saw some things that I needed to address, and that led to me actually getting a mentor. She was the one that recommended me getting a mentor to kind of unlock certain things within me. And again, that kind of propelled me more. And, and today, even in my organization now, I can think of, the chief executive, I'll give her a shout, Deborah Cadman. Again, like I have conversations with her, and those, I don't know if she knows it, but those little nuggets that I get from her kind of help to propel me. So definitely, like you, for some reason, definitely females have a big impact on my life. So yeah.
So we need more women at the round table,
Definitely.
more women in the guidance and instructing roles,
Absolutely.
even if it's to diffuse maybe the male energy or maybe the misinterpretation of whatever male energy brings.
Yeah.
But this has got to be everyone join into.
It's like my son. I told you earlier, I've got a 16-month-old son, and he loves both of us. But if you give him a choice, he's going to run to his mom. Like there's just that kind of maternal instinct that moms have for their young boys. I don't know why, but yeah, he will always go to his mom if you kind of give him a choice, really. So yeah,
it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So yeah, I'd want to say a huge thank you. For your points, your reflections. You've really made us think, and I think in summary, there's a lot to be said for if we're thinking about this new world. Organizations need to do their best to kind of tap into what combined authorities offer. Organizations are also to look into measuring whatever their impacts that they're trying to do includes. We gave some tips on how to measure, like do things like thematic analysis, look at weighting, look at time and resource allocation against any missions that organizations have. And then we obviously then explored, the journey, like the career journey and the impact of just small steps, you know what I mean? Follow the right stages, ideally access the right mentorship in a role, and then ideally, or hopefully, people move on to develop things that they need to develop. And in all of that, we can't forget each other, any people left behind. We need to have men and women in roles, probably more women in roles to diffuse, maybe arguably toxic masculinity, etc. But yeah,
I'll let you say
it. So yeah, perfect. Thank you very much for joining us. Anybody wants to know more about West Midlands Combined Authority, I think we said it on Twitter, westmids_CA, and that's Charlie Alpha. And on Facebook, it's West Midlands West Midlands CA, Charlie Aqua, all on Facebook. For yourself, if anyone wants to find you, it's LinkedIn.
It's LinkedIn,
just Michael Lewis.
I think it's Michael, actually. I might need to rebrand. I might need to rebrand myself as Mike on LinkedIn.
All right. Okay. So Michael Lewis on West Midlands Combined Authority. For anyone who cares a bit more about leading communities, please follow us on Facebook through Leading Communities. You can also follow Aspire for You on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn on A for U CIC. That's A for Alpha, the number 4, the letter U, CIC on all social media links. If you're interested in what I get up to, I am KitCasts with K for the kits and casts with a C. So anything you need to hear about around good ways for communities to start caring, keep caring, care more, follow us for more episodes of Leading Communities. I'm Kit Shawande, and I was your host.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to keep up to date with all things Leading Communities. You can follow Aspire for You at A4UCIC. To follow That All Media, search at That All Media. You can also join us on Facebook at Leading Communities Podcast.